Hey, I'm Tia,
And I'm Toni.
and this is Emotions Unscripted. We are on a roll now. So, how was your week?
My week was pretty slow. I was really intentional about just kind of slowing things down, being in retrograde, trying to review, not send out any typos. What about you? How have you been?
It's just chaos, and so I'm going through this process of trying to get everything together for an upcoming move, and I want to have things done and make things sure things are in order and I have this deadline to be out of one place, but only this deadline to get into the other. And it's just been chaos this week in terms of getting so much done. And one of the things I had to do one day is I had to cancel like half of my day of appointments. Well, it was my morning part of my day, and which was basically my whole day of appointments because I was thinking about like the energy transfer, and I think that kind of like leads into like today's topic and looking at like how our emotions are contagious. And one of the things I kept being concerned about was that I was already in a frazzled kind of state. And then you wanted me to pull it together. And I was like, these emotions were flying. They were tense. They were, I probably need some medication at this point. I almost stopped for happy hour with my kids in the car and be like, come on, we're going to happy hour. Because it was just like so much. And I was like, well, if I go and sit in front of these people, one of the things that I already know happens is that I start picking up some of their energies too. And so I already had a lot of energy going all over the place. And I didn't want to take some of theirs and add to it. And I also didn't want to give them some of mine. And so I didn't want to kind of create that feeling of, "Ah." But that actually just reminds me of it was a while ago. I was working with somebody, and this is probably like the most severe case of like ADHD in terms of like restlessness. And I have ADHD, but I'm old school where it wasn't diagnosed, and I learned how to mask and cover it up and function within society. And so like my movements and my fidgeting are more subtle. Like you see, I'll sit here and I'll rock in my chair all the time, so it's always like these more subtle movements. But I was working with somebody, and they're just all over the place. And I remember, like after that session, I was just like, like I gotta go for a run. Like something's going on. I was just like feeding off of all this energy, and the stuff that I was usually able to control, it was like gone. I was like, oh my gosh, I need a break. I'm like, I need to practice like recentering myself and grounding myself because it was so much. And so, with this week being the week that it was, I was like, I don't want to give anybody the energy that I'm feeling right now because it's really icky, and who wants that? And so, I'm going to reduce my interaction with people so that I don't pass anything to them and they don't pass anything to me.
And like we are all energetic beings, and how I see it as, when we are tired or maybe we're irritated or we're just not feeling ourselves, like the best thing you can do is like really pause and find ways to feel comfortable in your body, because I almost see it like an invisible shield. And once that shield is kind of broken or cracked, that's where those emotions are contagious and they can kind of seep through from other people and kind of like latch onto you, and you're like, oh my gosh, I wasn't even feeling that. But you're vulnerable when you are in a place of your emotions being all over the place or you just being drained.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to use, that same word of being vulnerable. And it's like, it reminds me of a couple episodes ago. I was like, I'm exposed. And so when my emotions are high, I'm already exposed. And there's so many things that could easily kind of impact me that I have to kind of be aware of to make sure that there's no exchanges of like energy or emotions between myself and whoever I'm interacting with. It kind of reminds me of how I always kind of, when I come home or when I'm transitioning from work to home, I'm always like, give me a minute because I need to regroup myself. I need to dispose of all the energy from my clients for the day. I need to like rebalance myself before I start dealing with y'all.
For sure. That happened to me like last week. I was in an office space and I was in this conference room with like all of these people. And I'm used to being in a space where it's just me. And I noticed with being around all of those people that when I got home, I was so tired and so drained. And one habit that I like to do when I feel drained like that, I go take a shower and I just speak my intentions and I call it just washing the day away. And then after I took a shower, I felt better. But people's energy definitely does affect you.
Mhm. That kind of reminds me of a conference I had been to. I think it was like last summer, and it was the same thing where it was just like constant interaction with people, and it's like all these little workshops throughout the day, the little mingling in between, the lunch hours sitting with people, the afterwards going to have drinks and dinner, and it's just like constant, like all these different people and everybody aren't everybody's not aware of what energy they may be putting off and not everybody's able to kind of block like their negative energy, and I can kind of just like feel it, and I'm like, it's just like chaos. And I just remember those nights where I would just be finished like at dinner at what 8, 9 o'clock, and then I'm going straight to bed because I gotta recharge because it's just been too much peopling and too many exchanges, and now I have to like cleanse myself. And a lot of times I cleanse myself with sleep.
That's one of the best remedies to cleanse yourself. It almost makes me think like I'm a very social person. Like I'm very extroverted. I love to be like the life of the party, but it'll get to a certain point where my social battery will just like die. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. And I just shut down and I'm like, okay, I need to conserve my energy. I can't be social anymore. And then that's when then that's my signal that I need to, kind of take care of myself and be a little bit more introverted.
Yeah, it's kind of like that power off mode, but it does remind me of the what is it called, the social introvert though, because they're very much like that, where it's like they can be very extra, what appears to be extroverted, but they need that time to recharge, and they may disappear for days on a time at a time, weeks at a time, and then they come back strong. Okay, I'm ready to socialize and be the light of the party again. But for me, you make it like 2 hours out of me. That's it.
That completely resonates. I've never heard of that before, but it resonates because I can spend a lot of time by myself, and I also grew up an only child,
Mhm.
so I love spending time by myself. But at the same time, I'm very, very social, so I'm definitely gonna have to look into that.
We'll hear a lot where an only child may be in that place of being very, introverted and like to themselves, but then you also hear of it being that they need people so much, and so they were always the ones who had friends over all the time, always being out with friends and things like that. And so it's interesting that you were I'm just going to be chilling by myself. And me, I had siblings, and I was always just chilling by myself, like leave me alone.
It makes me think of like in my younger years, and I was like super emotional, how I would always feel like somebody ruined my day. And as I got older, my husband would tell me, like, no one ruined your day. Like, you allowed them to ruin your day. And I really had to do a perspective shift because I was truly giving away my power, when I was younger. And now I'm able to recognize, like, no one can ruin your day unless you allow them to.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like when I hear people say, "Well, I'm concerned about making that person mad." You can't make that person mad. But what if I do this? You can't make that person mad. But they're gonna get mad. If they got mad, it's because they chose to get mad about it. And so, like, I can sit here and punch you in the face right now, and you can just be like, "Ouch, that hurt," or you can go crazy and beat the hell out of me too. And so you have a choice in how you kind of react to things. And so you, as a person trying not to make somebody else mad, you don't have any control over that. So you can be the kindest, sweetest person to them, and now they're mad because they think that you're like mocking them or that you're trying to get under their skin. And so you don't have any control over that.
I completely agree because the saying like your feelings are valid. I think some people use that as an excuse. My feelings are valid, but that doesn't mean your actions or behaviors are valid. And
Yeah.
I always try to give that disclaimer.
Hmm. I was like, you have the right to feel however you want to feel, but you can't go around punching people in their face unless you want to catch a case.
Exactly. I think also too, I think about the fact that if people find that their emotions are out of control and they're not able to control them and, be in a place of peace, then a lot of times they're attracting in those bad experiences. And I
Mhm.
don't even think that they're aware of the fact that they're manifesting and attracting things in against their will.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, I'm old, so I would be on Facebook, like, reading people's, like, posts, and it was, like, day after day sometimes with people, and they're just, like, complaining about this restaurant employer, complaining about this customer service agent, and it's like, after a while, you have to realize that the common denominator in this equation is you. And so I'm looking at my life. I was like, oh, I don't have a problem with the customer service agents there. Or I didn't have this experience at that restaurant. Or this, I was like, I don't ever have all these dramatic stories. Like, what is going on in these people's lives that they have these dramatic stories like every single day? And I was like, oh, it's them. I'm like, they're the common denominator. And so when they're putting out all this negative energy and coming at people with all these upsetting emotions, then it will transpire into something negative. But that kind of reminds me of when I was at Chick-fil-A and the girl. So my kids are always extra and they want ice cream cones, but I also don't want to go to the drive-through and I don't want to go in because I have to carry the ice cream cones and everything and it's too much. And so I always do curbside, especially when they're getting ice cream cones. Now, of course, that's bad because it puts it on the worker to have to carry the two cones too. But they they came out and brought me my stuff, but they didn't have the ice cream cones. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. There's ice cream cones on here too. So I just showed them on the list. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she goes and gets them. And then she's in there getting them. I'm realizing that she also forgot my milkshake. And I was like, oh, I don't want her to come back to the car. And I'm like, oh, but you forgot my milkshake too. And I'm like, go back and get it. And so I get out of my car to start walking to the door, and I run into her, and I take the cones from her, and I was like, hey, and I give her the receipt. I was like, there was also a milkshake on here. Oh, she's like, oh, no problem. I'm so sorry about that. I take the ice cream cones back to my car. She brings the milkshake to me, and I'm like, thank you. And she's like, nope, my pleasure. You know how they do. And so it was like a nice interaction, but I was like, I could have been the one that got mad and been like, you forgot my ice cream cones. And then she would have felt something too. I would have dampened her mood a little bit. And then she would have came back with the ice cream cones and I was like, and you forgot my milkshake. And thinking about like how that would have impacted her. And then what would happen is she would have like this nasty probably feeling inside, and who knows what she may have gone through and what I may have triggered within her by criticizing her inability to get me my desserts that we probably didn't need anyways. And how that would have transferred to like other people that she worked with for the rest of the night. And so when I look at people and they're constantly putting out this negative emotions or this negative energy, and and they're wondering why they keep getting it back. I'm like, that's stop. If you put out something positive, then you can get something positive in return.
For sure. And that almost makes me think about your emotions being like a radio signal. Like you're sending these signals out. It almost makes me think about the phrase like misery loves company. People that are miserable or unhappy or upset, they usually gravitate towards people and situations and jobs that bring that out of them. That's where they're comfortable, that's what they're admitting. But for you with the Chick-fil-A example, you really looked at the situation with the glass half full, and you didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable or put her in a certain mood, and you guys were able to just turn that you guys were able to just keep that a positive experience.
Yeah. It's kind of like what they say, what you catch more flies with honey.
Then vinegar.
Okay, I was like, I don't remember the rest of it. I just know you catch more flies with honey. So we always want to make sure that we're putting out those positive things, and so those positive things can kind of come back to us. And it's the same with emotions. But of course, we don't want to always like push down a negative emotion. And so if we have like a negative emotion inside of us, we want to kind of do what we can to protect it from being transferred transfer to somebody else. And so, um, no, we can't control how they respond, but we don't have to attack somebody. We don't have to get angry with somebody. And so, just because I'm feeling negative inside or I'm having a bad day doesn't mean I have to start yelling at the Chick-fil-A employee or cussing out people in my car, which I tend to do often, but they can't hear me, so it doesn't impact them.
For sure. And that's why I think it's so important to like check in with yourself and, see how you're feeling. Because if you're not feeling too hot, then that's your signal that maybe you need to take a nap. Maybe you need to take a break. Maybe you need a mental health day. So you're not, saying or acting in certain ways that's going to impact people in a negative way, because then it's going to come back on you and it's going to continue to impact you in a negative way as well.
Mhm. And it makes me think about like when I was talking about like the chaos of my week, I also remember that I had like two negative car interactions with people. They weren't my fault. I'm not taking responsibility for them, but I was like, how on, gosh, was it the same day? It may have been the same day where like two people like cussed me out and flipped me off in like one morning. But it wasn't my fault. I'm not going to take responsibility for any of that. But I also think about how I was already irritated that day. My energy was already out of whack, and it's like how much of that was radiating out of me into other people,
Mhm.
and also maybe making me more. I could have let them cut in the line in front of me, but no, they were doing what they're not supposed to be doing. You're not supposed to go through the teacher parking lot. You're supposed to go around the circle, and you were trying to cut in front of me, so I wasn't gonna allow it. But the thing is that I don't know how much that impacts people. And one of the things I've always told people, and it's really strange, is like I can feel people's energy through somebody else. And so I don't even have to interact with them. If they've just interacted with them, I still feel that. I was like, oh, someone's off about that person. And so I think about how much does my energy, my emotions, my big emotions, how much do they like radiate out around me? I probably have like this force field and just like knocks people over as I get angry.
It makes me think about when you were saying when you were picking up your kid. Whenever I'm driving and if people cut me off or if they're angry or they're speeding or whatever they're doing, I just kind of let people go. Like even when they're driving slow, like I try not to engage with the drivers because in my head I always say, I don't know what that person is going through because my husband has like bad road rage sometimes and he's like, "Why are they driving so slow?" And I'm like, what if it's somebody's great grandmother? Like, what if they're having health conditions? And he's like, you're just making up excuses for them. But it makes me feel better and it makes me feel more in control of how I feel to look at it as, maybe I can just show them some grace.
Mhm. And normally I can ride with that too. And but one of the things, it's not so much of, I don't know. I guess it's kind of, I don't know what they're going through, but I'm a real like numbers person. I look at like stats to be able to make me feel better or worse about things. And one of the things I still remember, and this was like years ago, I don't even know what the numbers are now, but it was like at any given moment, 1 in 4 people are thinking about suicide. And I was like, I don't want to be driving and then cuss somebody out. And that's the moment they're like, I'm going to end it all. I'm taking you with me. And so that's what I always think about. That may be my anxiety, but that's what I always think about in terms of like, I don't know what's going on with this person. I don't know what emotions they're feeling. And I don't want to be a victim of their emotions.
Of course. And whenever I see like people out being difficult, treating, customer service people like really badly, I just think like, man, like who hurt them? Like they must be very unhealed right now. They're having a very difficult time. And I just try to look at it from like an empathetic lens. Of course, there's boundaries if someone's being disrespectful, but for the most part, I that's just how I choose to look at it because then it doesn't like rock my internal world and throw
Mhm.
me off.
But I think that that's also part of like us being therapists is I always think about like unconditional positive regard and being able to like look past like all these other things to kind of know that there's a person under there. And so when you were saying, misery loves company, I always think about like what's making you miserable. If something is going on, as a therapist, like, what's happening? I need to heal you. I want to make sure that things are better for you. And I always think about that versus just being able to be like, you're a bad person. And even like if people who know me know that I love me some true crime. I love like my doctoral degree was in criminology because I wanted to study like criminals and things like that. And but one of the things is that even when people are doing like horrible things like murdering people after people, I'm like, who hurt you though? I was like, you didn't just come out like this. Who hurt you? And that's how my mind goes, is always wanting to like check in with that emotional state of somebody, and knowing that they're not just acting this way just because we have a few of those bad apples that come into the world and you're just off just because, but so many of them, like, they're just hurt people.
Yeah, because a lot of times when, certain situations happen and it's like a kid is kind of weird or off, and you'll see it on the news and like the neighbors talking about, little Johnny, and like little Johnny was very odd, but then the parents are like, he's fine. So it's like there's a disconnect. Like I feel like there were probably signs ahead of time, but maybe no one caught it, or they, cared to actually report it or do anything about it.
Hmm. But then that also makes me think about like, um, what we talked about before, and like those family like system and how that creates those emotions for people, and how they create what how they do deal with emotions and what they see with emotions and how they behave with their emotions and things like that. And so the parents saw it as normal because that's how they were too.
It almost makes me think about Jeffrey Dahmer and the series. I don't know if you watched it on Netflix, and it makes me think about the episode where his dad would encourage him and support him with, cutting up dead animals.
Hmm.
And I'm just thinking like why would his dad think that that's okay for him to do? But then once he made it into like a hobby, they thought that something was wrong with him. And it's like, you provided him with this.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's always interesting to see that the contagiousness of not only emotions but behaviors and stuff like that too. And then they get all finicky when the behaviors escalate into something else, and it's like, dude, you should have saw that coming.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's very hard for certain parents to, take accountability for what they may have taught their children consciously or subconsciously, like knowing or not knowing.
And I'm not going to say which one of my kids, but one of my kids I worry about a little bit. And I was like, I'm going to have to keep my eye on that one because that one may do some strange things. And so, but it's just being aware of what they do with their emotions, how they are when they're angry and things like that. I'm like, something's not quite right here. But I also have that awareness and understanding of mental health and emotions and what's normal behavior and what's not normal behavior, to be like, something ain't right here. Let me keep an eye on that.
And I think as a parent, it is really important to know how your kids handle stuff in either healthy ways or unhealthy ways, so you can either redirect them or get them help. But if you're the average parent and you're not a therapist, you're probably dealing with your own emotions. You're probably dealing with your own baggage. So how do you have space for a little one?
Yeah. And it's like, and even trying to, what a lot of those parents may run into is their emotions falling into these other kids, into these kids, like feeding into them. And they're trying to like keep everything together, but their kid is picking up on it. One of the things I think about is that, my oldest kid, like, I'm going to this through the stage with my older two of driving. And so I remember when I was going through driver's ed with my daughter, and she had to have like hours on the road with somebody, an adult. And I was like, me? You want me in the car with you? And one of the things that would happen is, I think I probably only did like 2 hours of driving ever with her, because we're in the car and my anxiety's flaring because this is a motor vehicle. We can kill people with this. This can cause a lot of damage and be very expensive. And so my anxiety is already high that you're giving this kid control over a vehicle. And so, but what's happening at the same time is that she has her own anxiety and she's feeding off of mine. And so she's in the car with me and she's like braking crazy. She's hitting curbs, and which is making my anxiety go up higher, which is feeding into her, and her anxiety is going higher. And I'm like, just pull over so I can take the wheel. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so from there on, like my sister would take her driving. When her dad was in town, he would take her driving. I just let her go driving by herself. And my sister's like, she's a really good driver. I was like, no, she's not. She runs over curbs. I was like, she's gonna kill us all. But that's that transfer of these emotions, and especially I think when we're already genetically connected, it makes that transfer stronger. And so we just feed off each other's anxiety all the time. And I try to kind of regulate myself, but she still feels it.
Of course. And I think that brings up a good point of how important it is to be responsible with your energy and your emotions when it comes to you going home and being around the people that you love, because you can essentially go from your workplace that you may hate, and then you come home and you bring that energy in. So it's a lot of responsibility with, when you come home to your loved ones, what energy are you bringing with you, from the outside world?
Yeah, that reminds me of like projection in the therapy world, as we call it. And it's like, oh yeah, you come home and kick the dog because you mad at your boss. And it's like we have to make sure that we're keeping emotions where they belong and not penalizing others because of their emotions. And I know one of the things that I would do whenever I would like go out with friends and it may have been a hectic day, it's like, hold on, y'all, I gotta regroup here. Okay, I'm present for y'all now. And it's just that I'm shutting down the day. I am closing that chapter. I am locking that door, and I'm entering to my world, which is calm, chaos free, where I have people who love and support me, and I don't have to deal with all that crap back there.
And you really bring up a beautiful point of it's okay to reset. If you feel like this frenzy of like anger inside or these big emotions, take some calming breaths,
Mm-hmm.
go get a glass of water, go get your iced coffee, do something that's going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more grounded. But it's okay to reset. But I think a lot of our society is like push through, make it happen. But it's like if you're feeling like you're falling apart, cancel that meeting,
Yeah.
you know?
But it's funny because you said iced coffee and reset, and it reminded me of the time that I was in the Starbucks line, and I don't know if I was running late or I was in a hurry or whatever it was, and I'm ordering my food, I mean drink, my drink, and like there's a car in front of me and he's taking freaking forever, and I was like, what is taking him so freaking long? I'm trying to go, and I'm probably cussing this guy out. Of course, he can't hear me. I'm fussing. I'm all irritated. I'm probably like slamming stuff around. I can't get my car out of my purse or whatever, and all this like agitated mess. And then I get up to the window, and the lady's like, oh, he paid for your drink already. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so all of that frustration, all those angry emotions I was feeling, I was able to do a reset because somebody else had positive emotions, which transferred into positive behaviors and and kindness towards me. And it was that moment of like, oh, I don't have to be all angry and frustrated. Now I feel like an ass, but that's okay. I was able to reset and 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 have a better day and have more positive emotions for the rest of the day and not allow, that moment to trickle into everything else.
One moment in your day that can really just throw off your whole day. And one thing I like to encourage my clients to do and myself is look for the joy in your day. Like literally, like set your intentions. I'm gonna find the joy in my day. And 9 times out of 10, you're gonna find more joyful moments if you intend to look for it than if you just go throughout your day.
Mhm. And that kind of reminds me of what you were saying early in terms of like, giving away your happiness. And I think about joy, and people will like give away their joy. And so that person may get that joy. It's like, okay, I found that joyful thing going into the office, and now Susan is mad, and Susan is emailing everybody nasty emails. And it's like, do I give my joy away to Susan and respond in a negative way? Or do I keep my joy to myself and keep on going throughout the day? Because I do have a choice in that.
You do. And I always think about what I can control and what I can't control. And I think that's where people get a little confused and they try to focus on things that's outside of their control. And it's like, ask yourself, can I control this situation? Can I control my actions, my behaviors? Yes. Can I control Susan? I wish, but I can't.
It reminds me, I used to think of, I worked with a lady before, and I remember, and it's funny because now I'm that same person, but I remember she used to have a charm bracelet and always like bang on the freaking desk, and it would just drive me crazy. And she was just like the most happiest, content person, but her dang on bracelet made me furious. And I would just be mad like the whole freaking day because her freaking bracelet is hitting the desk. And it's like, you wasted so many days, weeks, months being frustrated with this person, giving away your energy, your good mood, the nice conversations that you could have had with people because you were worried about the freaking bracelet on their desk.
Yes. And we have so much control over our internal world. And a lot of times we just give that power away and we just let people take that power. We're just like, here, go ahead, take my power.
Yeah, you can have it. Here, take my happiness, take my joy, take everything that makes my life wonderful. Here, you can have it. I'm just gonna sit here and be miserable, and then
Mhm.
go to therapy.